I do not have time for Linux, and neither does any other normal person who actually values their time and has stuff to do. Hey everybody, I'm still in China in the great city of Shenzhen. Nice, bright, beautiful day. It's very humid here though. It's very hard to get used to that aspect of it. But I want to talk a little bit about NixOS. I recently have just upgraded my computer again, updated my packages on NixOS. And I just think to myself about how great of an experience this is compared to previous Linux experiences that I've had. To be perfectly clear, when I say that I do not have time for Linux, the NixOS actually does use the Linux kernel. You can have all of your great Linux packages on it, if not even more Linux packages than the distributions that you might use. I would say Nix packages is comparable to Arch and the AUR, if not even more than that. Frankly, the number of packages just keeps growing all the time, more than 80,000, you can see on their website. But when I say that I don't have time for Linux, think about what the Linux experience is. You basically have two options that you can choose from. You can either get a distribution like Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint that uses Debian packages where it is a maintainer that curates only the stable versions. What that means is you're going to be severely out of date. Your packages are going to be very old compared to what the greatest and latest software is. And I like to use new software. Or you can use Arch Linux. I actually was an Arch Linux user before I went to NixOS. And you have all the new versions of packages, but there's the experience of updating Pac-Man and having to cancel all of your appointments because now your programs are not working again because you upgraded one dependency, but another package still expected the dependency to be on an older version, and you could even get into what's called dependency hell, to where you have an unresolvable conflict of packages needing newer, older versions of other packages, and it just turns into a whole mess very, very quickly. You can manually downgrade some packages, but that can only get you so far. If you use it for long enough, you will get into a very sticky situation. NixOS is unlike any other Linux distribution. It's not just another package manager, it's not just an RPM, another zipper or something. This is a whole different thing. I'm about to do something that might blow your mind if you've never seen something like this before. I'm about to list my /bin, and there's only sh in there. Where does that go to? If I were to see where that actually goes, it goes off into the Nix store. If I were to list my Unix system resources bin, it just has env. This is only for POSIX compliance reasons, or else they would not be there. Some things really just expect /bin/sh, but everything else is somewhere else. My Python, which Python? Alias of Python 3, which Python 3? That's here, but where is that actually? That's actually in the Nix store. So that in itself is also a symlink, and it goes to the Nix store. So I can list the whole Nix store, look for Python, and I have these different Python versions over time and different packages of Python. But the point is that that's where all your binaries, and that's where all your important information lives. And it gets symlinked into the user environment as it needs to. Why is this good? What problems don't I encounter? Dependency hell is not a problem on Nix because it can resolve arbitrary dependency graphs. Imagine a complex dependency graph. Here is main here. Say main is your main interactive shell, like ZSH, everything else. You have your programs. One is Python 3.14, Rust 1.79, but then you have one package that expects nightly Rust. It expects 1.81. How do you resolve this? There's actually multiple channels of Nix that you can follow. You can follow Nix stable or unstable. Stable upgrades every 6 months. Unstable is constantly upgrading, sort of like Arch Linux, think like a rolling distribution. And you can actually sideload both at the same time. Most of my system is on stable, most of the important stuff that I don't care about, and select few programs I can select to be unstable. And so what that means is there's going to be some copies of dependencies, but it really doesn't matter. You never get yourself into trouble. And here's why. The store will just have multiple copies of these things. It will have one Rust 7.9, another Rust on 1.8.1, and it can have multiple versions of Python as well. And so then it will just symlink those one copies to where it needs to go. You might have heard of different containering solutions in the past, like Snap and Flatpak and AppImage, and I'm not too hip to how they resolve their management systems. I think AppImage would just create a whole virtualized environment per thing, containerization. Nix is not exactly containerization. It is the benefits of containerization, but through symlinking voodoo magic, that honestly just makes everything easy and nice. And you can really just move on with your life and get to doing the things you want to do. So this is what it'll do. You see 3 different Rusts, but it will only have 2 versions in the store that it will symlink into, and everything works just fine. Now let's say you want to do something a little crazy. Let's say you're now trying to use an old application that was written in Python 3.7, and the writer was using deprecated methods, and you don't really know Python. You don't know how to rewrite the code in order to use the newest features and not throw the same warnings. Let's look at a little script that I wrote, myoldscript.py, that has collections.mapping. So that got moved to collections.abc.mapping. So if you're just a user, you try to run this, my current version of Python is 3.11. And so if I try to run my old script, module collections has no attribute mapping. Oh no, I need to downgrade. What do I do from here? You can actually write a Nix shell that has its own special environment. So going back here, you say, box on the bottom, Python 3.7.nix. I want to create a shell that just has Python 3.7. And I want to be able to hop into it as I want, and then I want to leave, clean my hands, and go back to normal. And so this gets symlinked to another version that, again, exists in the store, and you can use it for the duration of that shell and hop out. What does this actually look like? You can write a Python 3.7.nix. This is all I wrote here. You see, I have the old packages. I just say, here is the tar, import that tar, and then from that now old packages, get Python 3.7 from that, and have that be my build input. This language is not too hard to learn. It's just a declarative syntax for writing shells. But once you learn how to write it, the world is your oyster. So hopping out here, I can now point my Nix shell to this Nix file, and it'll take a second to load, everything else. But now I have a new version of Python. Python version, Python 3.7. If I try to now run Python, my old script, I get the deprecation warning, but I still get to print the value that I wanted to print before. It lets me know that if I keep on doing this for long enough, it'll break, but it's fine. I can just use the application, I can run the application, and be able to solve all of my problems. This is what I mean by it is barely Linux. In Nix packages, you can install Nix packages actually on any Linux distribution, and you can also get a Nix store and symlink the Nix store into your path and be able to use these programs because it's actually distribution agnostic. NixOS is just what happens when you allow Nix to define your entire operating system. And I found that to be a benefit for me. Nix does have its own problems that you'll run into building certain applications. For example, if you need FHS compliance, FHS, the file hierarchy standard, I believe, it is the standard that says everything should be in /bin. You can, there are like workarounds, compatibility layers. In Nix, I can just open Z shell with an FHS environment. So now if I look at /bin, everything is still there. Now, of course, it's still just symlinks. If I look at where does ls actually live, it still symlinks back to the Nix store, but it can at least give you an environment you're more familiar with. But again, these are just compatibility issues. But each set of issues are a lot more solvable, just like patching and elfing binaries, and they've been pretty good about that. Like as time goes on, that is becoming less and less of an issue. Versus the issues that will always exist on Arch. You only have one /bin/bash. If one program wants bash 3 and another program wants bash 5, you are not resolving that conflict. There is no way to resolve that conflict. Whereas on Nix, this is the cleanest, most elegant solution that doesn't require running a million virtualized containers that I've seen. Now another thing is, I might start getting crazy here. The craziest thing when I say that NixOS is barely Linux is what if we had a Nix system that wasn't even Linux? I don't think this is actually going to happen, not with NixOS, not from the discourse I've seen, but there have even been people that are trying to abstract out the Linux kernel. If I look at just what my system configuration actually looks like, if I go to my Nix config, NixOS configuration, you see my time zone, my networking host name, everything else, my groups, everything about the system is actually defined through here. It's actually an immutable system as well. I don't want to get too much into the details of how to define the system. That might be better left for a more focused video. This is more on the packages. But this is letting you know that maybe even the kernel is something that you can replace as well. Looking at the Church of Suckless NixOS. This is a 7-year-old post, but somebody even trying to get the kernel as something that you can just sweep out from under the rug and maybe use a BSD kernel if you like. Or even systemd as the init system. What if you can just use run it or anything else and just have the system work like that? Unfortunately, I think NixOS is a little bit entrenched at the moment with using systemd and everything else. I've been reading a lot of these posts, and a lot of people will just make it sound like it's something that's never going to happen, basically a 0% chance. You can read some of these threads yourself. Basically a 0% chance of this happening in the next decade. But again, the sentiment is still there of a Nix system that could even be free from Linux itself. And just bring all the Nix packages and compile it for whatever platform you want. Somebody even did this once. NixOS BSD, Nix BSD, an unofficial NixOS fork with a free BSD kernel. I wouldn't recommend you actually run this system. It doesn't look like it is too well maintained. It doesn't have too many stars, but at least opens your eyes to the possibilities of, what if you're not tied down to a system and you can have these packages that you just define the configuration for, you just define what you want, and it just works no matter where you move it. But again, maybe this is better saved for something more focused on just build systems or creating the systems itself. The main takeaway is just, I don't experience dependency hell. I will never experience dependency hell again, so long as I am on NixOS, and I'm very thankful for that. That is all for today. Thank you, everybody.